Okay, so let me start. I think those who are going to join will join as we proceed. This is not going to be a long session. This is going to be well, relatively brief with some questions at the end. And the objective of today is really to give you an overview of the Value Ed program that we begin with from July. So I'd like to welcome everybody. I know it's Friday afternoon, and on a Friday afternoon, you could be doing 1,000 other things rather than hopping onto this and listening to me. So I truly appreciate it, and I'm humbled. This is the first of the Value Ed overviews. We will be having many more as we proceed. And as I say, if there's anybody that you want to join them, want to join these kind of sessions so that they get an understanding before they actually become members of the program, you're very welcome to invite them to these, as well as the fact that they'll be on the website in terms of the future dates. So sort of the typical house rules, just manage your cell phones if possible, please, and the mics. This time we won't run over as we did on the 16th. I think we'll really stay within the time frame allocated. We are recording this one as well. I hope that everybody's comfortable with that. Seems to be the standard norm of these processes anyway. And I will be, this is slightly different to what we did on Tuesday. For any of you who were on the Tuesday show, I will be going through a presentation of a little bit in terms of what it is that we will be covering as we go through the program. So let me start just by giving you a sense of what it is that we're trying to do. So the program is designed for self-mastery, personal excellence, and performance. Now that really is a number of, words thrown together, but let me break that down to you, particularly from the personal excellence and performance point of view. I don't think you get personal performance without a true appreciation of personal excellence. And really, what is personal excellence? Personal excellence starts with a sense of self. We truly believe that a true appreciation of who you are, the line where confidence is very strong about who you are, gives you that personal sense of self. That sense of self then can translate itself into a sense of performance. But what we also believe is that, this sense of self starts with a beginning of you loving yourself. If you don't love yourself, then the challenges begin there in terms of how you express who you are to others. So to love yourself, you also need to know yourself. The challenge of knowing yourself means that to know yourself, you need to actually see yourself. And that's important because I don't think we spend a lot of time stopping to actually see ourselves. And as I say, this plays a crucial role in the construct of how you start developing self-mastery. To see yourself requires you to stop and look at yourself. And this program is designed that when you come on, we enable you to stop and to look at yourself. And I'm excited about this because I've been doing this for a few years. And what I've tried to do in the program is to create what I call aha moments and epiphanies. The program is an hour long. Typically, before we started doing this on Zoom, I would be at schools, universities, colleges, and organizations. I'd be given an hour with the youth, with students, and you want to leave there with them thinking very seriously about what it is that they're going to be doing moving forward. So the core of the program is actually 6 modules that we have, which I'm going to go through with you at just now. There are 6 core modules, and then we have an additional 6 modules as well that we've added on to those 6 core modules, simply because we want this program to run for the year, And we also think that these other core programs are quite essential. I'm going to be talking just now about the 6 core, but let me give you an indication of what the other core programs are. The other core programs are social media and social media awareness. I think we all appreciate that that is actually quite important. Working in teams, that is probably one of the critical skills of the future. It is critical now, but certainly in the future, working in teams is going to be essential. Your capability and your skill to be working in teams. I've done a number of exercises that were particularly designed for board members to understand their level of being able to work together. And trust me, it's not as simple as just assuming that I'm a team player. There are certain skills you have to develop. One of them, which is one that is always ongoing with most of us, is called the skill of listening. But that's another one that we go into. Skills of the future. I think we talked about that for those of you who joined us on the 16th. We've got a program so we enable young people and the students and the youth to understand what are going to be the critical skills of the future and what it is that they need to start doing with those skills in order to start acquiring them. The big one that we're developing and have certain levels of partnerships that we're going to be bringing in to support this is the Youpreneur. And the Youpreneur talks to e-commerce and the opportunities that lie ahead for people in the future. Leadership skills. Leadership skills are critical. I don't think we are inculcating leadership skills. We assume leadership is something that you're born with. It isn't. You have to learn those skills. And as I say, those are the kind of skills which once learned are transferable from one area to another. We have presentation skills, which I think are vital, particularly for young people, and particularly if you're going to be a youpreneur and a preneur, where pitching is going to be a critical part of the role that you're going to be fulfilling. So each of these modules are lengthy. So what we've done is we've broken them down into 2 sessions. So each of the modules will have 2 sessions to them that will run within a month. So if I can go to the presentation now, you can all still see the presentation, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm just going to kick off just giving a little bit of a background around, you know, who we are. ValueAid was formed with the knowledge that leadership will come from the youth. I do believe personally that if we don't inculcate these critical skills in the youth today, we're going to, you know, be visited with some challenges in the future. I think we're all cognizant of the kind of leadership that actually exists today. And maybe that's as a result of what was sown many years ago in order to get us where we are today. So we do need to think about the future and inculcating that. We want to build the future generations to make informed and considered choices. I say that back in times before you could have studied medicine and then 5 years later left medicine and done something else. You could have studied engineering. 5, 10 years later, left and done something else. I think those parameters are getting narrower. So we need to start ensuring that the youth are making the informed choices about what it is that they want to do. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the program of choice. We want to effect positive change in the leaders of tomorrow. And obviously our promise is to inspire better choices to build tomorrow. So typically what we've been doing as ValueAid is that we've been going out to organizations where the youth are. We've been going to learnerships, we've been going to schools, colleges, and universities. And now we've translated that into an online interactive, and probably 70 to 80% of what we'll be doing is online and interactive, because I think it lends itself to a number of...
Not sure if it's our connection this side, but we're cutting off. We can't hear you.
Is that the same for everybody?
No, I can hear you.
I can hear you perfectly.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. Sometimes it's usually a case of just the connection on one side. So maybe it's, you know, apologies for that. So these are the kind of areas we've gone into, and this is what we'll be going into the future, still in these areas, but obviously in a different in a different manner. The programs that I've talked about, and I'll get into a little bit more detail of the core ones, are preparation. Preparation and choice we've separated, so that's why it makes them 6. And I'll tell you the importance of each of those. Dream the plan the dream, keep on keeping on, and defining your success. Those are the core ones, and I also mentioned to you the additional modules that we actually do in the program. So let me just jump in so that you get a sense of what it is that we talk about in this program. Now, these sessions of, they're an hour long. The programs are quite in depth. So what you'll be getting here is more of a flavor of what it is that we will actually be talking about, and in more ways than one workshopping. So preparation, we start off with the construct, and if those of you who were with me on the 16th of June, we talked about this as an opening, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but for those of you who weren't, we start off here talking quite extensively about reaping what you sow. And the importance of that is trying to ensure that we all identify with the fact that the future is in our control. So if we agree with that kind of philosophy of thinking, or that metaphor and that statement, which is biblical, that you reap what we sow, we dive into that. And obviously, as I mentioned, we talk quite extensively around the fact that you reap what you sow. So we need to start sort of blurring out a lot of the, what I would call in some cases, excuses that define some of the reasoning as to why we don't do certain things. So the outcomes of your future are highly dependent on the individual. We then talk about the construct of being born unique. So what we do particularly is just make you stop and think just about the whole conception process, that you are born as an individual, brought onto this planet as a creator to create, and you are unique, that your fingerprints, that your DNA are not like anybody else's on this planet. And there's reasoning for that, because everything that you are meant to do is unique to you, that you have the ability to ask from others, to get advice, to get information, but ultimately the choice of what you do is yours. And that's why we go on to the subject of choice, which I'll get into at the a little bit later. The other critical thing, we talk about preparation as the foundation for most of what we go on to talk about, is the fact that time is going to require you to be, to be set aside in order for you to prepare. If you're not putting time aside, and this is physical time, not metaphorical time, i.e. an hour a day, 2 hours a day, to sit down and think about what it is that you're meant to be preparing for, then you're not really preparing. And the last point, which I'll give you here, which I think is critical for everybody to understand, is that if you think about time, what you put into what you prepare for usually takes longer than what you actually get from the delivery of that. So typically with the youth, I say to them, well, how long are you studying for matric? And if you grade 12, it's a year, 9 months, 10 months. How long was the English paper? 3 hours. So, whether you're planning to go on holiday, how long do you save for? A year. How long is your holiday? 2 weeks. So the psychology of understanding that preparation takes longer than implementation is important, because this talks to being steady and being consistent in your preparation process. We always talk about preparation being the key component that leads to future success, that leads to the outcome that you're looking for tomorrow. And usually your situation today is a consequence of what you prepared for a week or a month ago. So typically, again, with students, you'll ask them, how many of you are ready for the exam next week? And you'll get a show of hands of some people who say they are and some people who are not. But you all had equal time to prepare. So that's the construct of preparation. It really begins to lay the foundation of understanding that there's time that needs to be set aside, that time is going to take longer than the actual implementation of what you're going to do, and that in order for you to think about what you're going to be preparing for, understand who you are as an individual and understand that you are brought into this world born unique, and therefore the critical things that you're going to have to think about really lie within you. Then we go on to the next subject, which is choice. I'll finish these, by the way, and then we can take questions later. So here we talk extensively about the gift of choice, that as human beings, we are given this capacity to be able to choose, but what are going to be the criteria that you're going to use to choose? And here we talk about the development and the building of what I would call guiding principles. What are the guiding principles that you start putting into place that start defining whether or not you're going to do A or you're going to do B? Now, guiding principles, I give examples of mine. One of the ones that I do give, which is a personal guiding principle, and the guiding principle of mine, which was personal to me, and again, you know, everybody has to start making those their own, and when we go through the workshopping process, they start thinking about the guiding principles that define them. So I have a couple. The one, and in no particular order, but when I actually run this through with those who are part of the program, I do it in actual order of my age and development. But one critical one for me, which I probably started doing from about the age of 23, was that I made a conscious decision never to negotiate a salary in my life, which I've never done. So any job I've ever walked into, I've always said, this is what I earned before. You give me what you give me. If it's 2%, 5%, 10%, that's it. And the simple reason for that was the critical thing for me was gaining experience, gaining knowledge. One of the guiding principles I had also was that in any environment, in every environment I was in, I would try and absorb as much information as I could. I have a personal one. The personal one is I am an adopted child at the age of about 10. I made a conscious decision that I would not consider myself adopted, and I'd consider myself a member of the family. So these are things that you can start making up and thinking about on your own. The last one, which is a big one for me, which resulted in quite a bit of success in my life, was that I failed my matric. My equivalent of my university exams, I failed. And before I failed that exam, actually, it was probably 2 years before that, I had made the decision that anything that I fail once, I will not fail again. So that forced me to go and repeat. And the second time I was quite successful. So what are the guiding principles that you build for yourself that stick to you, that define the decision-making processes that you make as you go along? The other thing that we talk about is, we start beginning to talk about here is, when making choices, do you have a philosophy around what will help you make those choices? Because if you don't have it, then you are probably going to look at, you know, random luck, hope, and chance as the criteria that are going to end up making your choices for you. And when you do that, this is not a time or a stage or an age where you can go 180 in one direction and 180 in another direction. The time factors are very limited, and the competitiveness of the environment is very limited. I'm not saying you can't do it. All I'm saying is that the advice is, it's not the general idea or the general way you should be going. The last thing about choice that we talk about is this thing of awareness and attitude. So each person has a light. Be aware of the light amongst all the light that shines. Your collective light lights the path, but does not light your way. Trust that your way will guide you to your destiny. So your awareness of yourself in the environment of others is critical, and your attitude in terms of how you portray yourself is also critical. And then that will also kick itself in when we talk a little bit more about keep on keeping on. Particularly with the young, we say, okay, so the choices that you've had to make are friends, universities, whether you've got a boyfriend, girlfriend, what you like, your sport, etc. But as you move forward, your choices are going to be very different. You're going to have to start thinking of these very core choices that are part of you. Family planning, managing your health. How are you going to decide if your spouse is the correct spouse? paying bills, where to live, deep friendships, what you can afford. So these are the kind of choices that now have to come from an embedded principle of that's been guiding you along the way. And this is the slide that talks to the guiding principles. So we help in choices young people start thinking about guiding principles that are core to them. And obviously we're sowing the seed now, and that seed will develop over time. But it's at least important to start sowing that seed early if it hasn't been there, and being clear and conscious and deliberate and purposeful with yourself around these guiding principles as they help you and mature as you get older. So we then, now that we've understood preparation is essential, we've understood that choice is going to be key, because preparation is going to take time, so your choices need to be a little bit correct. We now then talk about dreaming the plan. Now, dreaming the plan, when we get into the subject, it's very interesting, because setting a vision has always been seen in cases where I've experienced it as what I would call setting a tomorrow, or setting a next week, or setting a 2-year. What we try to inculcate here is the dream must scare you. If you dream big, if your hopes, aspirations, and ambitions are sizable enough, you will know, because you will probably in some cases question them. You will probably in some cases have others question them. But the magnitude of that dream has to be significant. Otherwise, it isn't what we would consider a vision. The vision has to be something that is probably and significantly beyond what you think you're able to reach. So we then start going through this process of what is it that you're dreaming of? And obviously we start off with very short objective kind of dreams, and we grow those so that that confidence in individuals to really aspire, to really think big, and to really see the future begins to be embedded in them. How far can you see ahead? As far as the eye can see is the size of your dream. But we then start beginning to advise them that you can dream as much as you like. The dream is free, but the journey is not. And that's when we then start talking about the other components of dreaming, which is translating that from dreaming to planning. You've dreamt the plan, now you must plan the dream. And this is where we get into discussions and workshopping around how to do that. By the way, just one more thing about the dream. We tend to try and, as much as possible, inculcate the fact that within the dream, there are two things that are critical. What's motivating that dream, and what's your intention with that dream? Because the holistic element of motive and intent should actually be the driver to setting that dream. And we get into a little bit more detail around what are those two critical components. Planning the dream. So I am a stickler for planning, and planning is writing things down. The classical statement, most people don't plan to fail, but they fail to plan. And they usually fail to plan because the plan has to be written down. You have to get to a point where you're sitting down, setting time aside, preparing for this future that you're trying to create, writing it down and beginning to understand what is it that you're setting yourselves. And then we get into, so what are the things that we write down, and what are the other things that we set ourselves? And this is the element of breaking the vision that we've set down into objectives. So if it's a 10-year vision, you break it down into 2-year objectives, or if it's a 5-year vision, etc., you break it down into 1-year objectives. Then you take those objectives and you break them down into goals. And those goals are what you do on a monthly basis in the course of that year, of the objective that you've set yourself for that year. Then we take those objectives, those goals, and we break them down into daily tasks. And this is where, as I was saying on Tuesday, it becomes mundane, and where it tends to break down, because the correlation between your daily tasks does not necessarily meet that great ambitious vision that you have. So an example I always give is, if Vic wants to run, the Olympics in the next, 4 to 8 years, then that's a great vision, and he wants to win. That's a fantastic vision. But the fact that Vic tomorrow has to change his diet and completely redo his fridge is not really the most exciting thing that creates the day-to-day thing. The fact that Vic has to go jogging every day or running every day to gain levels of fitness is the mundane yet critical element that drives the actual goals, that actually drives the objectives, that enables you to reach the vision. So writing things down is important. Understanding the difference between an objective, goal, and task is important. And one of the things that we tell those who are part of the program is that today is not like 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you didn't have the kind of technology that you have today. You'd always have to write things down on a piece of paper and hope you find the paper and you don't lose the paper, and diaries, and you turn the page and forget what you. Now everything is technological. It's always seamless, and it's also interacts with each other. What I write on my iPad can appear on my laptop, can appear on my phone, and there are reminders, bells that go off, etc., etc. So we go through that technological capability of being able to set these different milestones into those pieces of technology. So we've prepared, we've made the right choice, we've dreamt the plan, and now we're marching along having planned the dream, and life hits you. COVID comes along. Something comes along that completely derails the direction that you're going in. This program here is called Keep On Keeping On. How do you, having done all that, now keep on going, irrespective of what's going on around you? And again here, we start touching on a couple of things. The one is we go back to your identity. Your sense of self is very important. In order for you to master performance, you need to be true and very honest with yourself. And that sense of self doesn't necessarily constantly mean that I'm always going to be on my game. There is the point of sense of self where you identify with the kind of things that actually give you a difficult time, or actually, stumble you. That knowledge is also as important as the kind of things that get you up and keep you going. One of the mantras that I have, and I've always had, and I mentioned this on Tuesday as well, so apologies for repeating it, is that this was my first mantra ever. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. Life is about learning to dance in the rain. And that was important to me because in difficult times, I consistently used to use this mantra, had it everywhere around me, so that I knew that I had to continuously have the same attitude as you go forward. Identity. Now, we're not psychologists in any way, and we don't get into deep psychological discussions, but what we do try to do is to have you identify with yourself and to write some of the key things that make you who you are. Now, interestingly enough, I've done quite a bit of executive search, and simple questions like, what are the 5 key strengths that you have? Or what are the 5 key challenges that you have? People struggle with, because they haven't really spent enough time either digesting what those are, or even appreciating what they have when they have it. And it's important to have that level of identity where you can understand yourself in more ways than one. Philosophy will always be important, because typically what we have, and I hear it quite a bit, the old French saying of c'est la vie, what will be, or things like it always happens to me. Those are the kind of philosophies that people have, and they're not necessarily always the philosophies that get you through difficult times. So one has to hold some mantras, some philosophies, some ideals, some constructs, and then get into the different elements of scenario planning. So I said I was going to go in one direction. What is my scenario if A, B, C, D happens? Can I go in another direction and still meet the same point that I was going to? Those are critical in the construct of Keep On Keeping On. Lastly, defining your success. So it's important in your 5 to 10 year vision to truly begin to understand who is the person that you'd like to see yourself be. Now, typically, and I know this because we all succumb to this in some form or another, your natural sense of leaning towards what success is as a definition is always the tangibles. It's always the visibles. It's the material. And we want to go through a discussion with those on the program to say, well, what are the other elements of value-based success, that don't look at financial or size or quantum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Winning, competitiveness, coming number one, and the classical fame and fortune that our reality TV is passing forward. What are the other things that you may think about that are embedded in you that you may require? And these may not be tangible or physical. So time is important. How much time and access do I have to myself? Pride and work, integrity. I mean, I think, as we all know, in the current environment that we're in, that's an important success element, to be able to say, do you know what, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm not prepared to lower myself to. You know, health. I want to find myself in a good, healthy position, and I want to find myself making sure that I maintain that health. I want to have a level of independence. So we then go into a pretty deep discussion and also deep workshopping, so that, you know, those in the program can find other constructs of success that they may not necessarily have thought about. My other very strong mantra in terms of defining my success is that I always tend to scan the environment to see which direction I should be going. And one of the things that I've always used is this mantra of wise is he who learns from his mistakes, but wiser are those who learn from other people's mistakes. And I think it's important because as we've gone through our history in South Africa, it's very clear to see that there's some decisions that have been made that have not been necessarily favorable, either by groups of people or individuals. How is it that some people can go in and make exactly the same error again? So we need to be capable of being able to discern the environment and make the right decisions at the right time. I'll end off with a slide that really looks at what I believe the future of South Africa requires, that we need to support our students and youth to develop an overall sense of belonging and accountability, direct them to the possibilities they have to contribute to the future of our well-beings, inspire them to prepare for their tomorrow using what they have today, and remind them that our future, regardless of what we're going through, that the future is always bright and can be even brighter. So these are visuals from the Fees Must Fall. So that's the program in itself. I'll end off just quickly and then take some questions if there are, by saying that there's additional offerings to the program. The additional offerings is that we will go through the core elements of the Value Ed program. We'll also go through the additional elements of the Value Ed program. We will also introduce what we call Industry Lead Masterclass. Now, the Industry Lead Masterclass is somebody from a particular function, like a CFO or the CEO of a particular sector, like the financial sector, who will come in and talk very broadly around the economy of our country, in terms of what are those sectors or those functions actually going through, so that the people on the program can be able to understand, as they're grappling with their decisions and their choices and their preparation, what they should be thinking about, particularly from those who are on the ground. And we will run these once a month over Zoom, live and interactive. We'll have Mogul classes. Now, Mogul classes are very subject matter specific. So we'll have these once a month, and these are, for example, you know, if we are going to dive into this construct of planning, I will bring in a planning expert who will then talk to different scenarios of planning. If we're going to talk about, for example, CVs, I will bring in somebody who has expertise in CVs. We'll also have classes that are career guidance classes. Now, these career guidance classes will run twice a month, and we will have 2 to 4 careers in these classes. And the idea here is to bring a journalist, to bring a doctor, to bring a digital marketer, and they will then start constructing and deconstructing their experiences in getting into those careers, so those in the program can understand that. But the other thing that we will be doing is actually talking about careers of the future. So which careers don't you get into? as those careers begin to wade in the future. The one I always joke about and apologies if they're here, but is the immigration officer. So, you know, the future of immigration is going to be narrow as we proceed to robotics and artificial intelligence. That's the kind of thing people we're going to be meeting at airports and border posts. That's the career classes. Then we're going to have thought leadership articles that we will be distributing. The thought leadership articles are not the sort of deep Harvard University articles. These are really articles geared to the youth and the students to be able to begin to start conceptualizing, based on the subjects and the topics that we've spoken about, the various elements that are out there on the thought leadership side. The other element is the Directory of Inquiries, Directory of Communities, I beg your pardon. The Directory of Communities is something that we're setting up, particularly for those who are members and have joined the Value Ed program. And I've always enjoyed these Directory of Communities, which is where if we have a third year, you know, accounting student, or a second year marketing student, or a grade 12 matric student, and Dumisa, for example, who's in second year of work, etc., they can see each other. And if Dumisa, for example, my son, requires in his job in digital marketing, accounting assistance, he can look up the Directory of Inquiries and see somebody who's doing second or third year accounting, or if he needs marketing assistance, or if the grade 12 student requires an internship in a particular area, they can look up the Directory of Inquiries and be able to find somebody there. So we're trying to make this a holistic place to come for the youth and students to get these kind of energetic capabilities. There will also be individual leadership coaching. The individual leadership coaching will be at a price negotiated by whoever it is that they've met. So if we bring on a CEO or CFO, and there's a lot of people who like him, they can then say, I want to follow you, but this is not mentorship, this is coaching. So coaching comes with a little bit more commitment. It's priced, and that negotiation of pricing can happen between that particular person and the individual who's looking for them. But we want to make sure that once you do that, you're committed to something. However, there will be, and I'm excited, and the gentleman's actually with us, to be able to offer a group coaching capability. So where a coach can come on live and interactive on Zoom and have conversations with young people with regards to some of the essential coaching tips that they can give. So yeah, that's it all for. You will be able to go into the website. You will see under pricing and plans 3 programs. The one is a free program, which is just really your ability to interact with the website. Then you will have the 200 Rands a month program, which gives you the value ed core subject matters with regards to the programs and the sessions. And then you'll have 300 Rands per month, and that'll give you everything that I've mentioned at this precise moment. So obviously the best deal is that, and we've tried to keep it at what I would call a palatable pricing. I've equated it to almost going to a movie and buying popcorn. So it's not too far away from that. I'd like to also just finish off by mentioning that program summaries will be available online. At the end of August, we're hoping to produce a value ed booklet that will have all the information that is actually that would be part of the program that young people can then take away, hold on to, and have for the future. And the last thing is that as Value Ed, we are paying it forward ourselves. So for every number of people who are joining the website, any one of the 200 Rands or 300 Rands, we're going to be donating, and you will see it on the website very specifically, 1,000 Rands to children living in vulnerable homes. And the vulnerable situation that we're looking at very specifically is children who are heading up households, and particularly children who are living with elderly grandparents who are supporting them. There's a lot of that at the schools, some of who are writing the trick, and also in the tertiary institutions, and we would like to play a role to try and support them as well. Quickly, coming soon is Valuepreneur. So Valuepreneur is going to be from an entrepreneurial point of view, now beginning to say, now that you find your passion, your purpose, your core, your understanding, how do you translate this into an actual youpreneur, valuepreneur, entrepreneurship capability? We're going to be doing, as you'll see on the website, work with educators as well and teachers. Typically, I've always been asked to give this program not only to the youth, but to lecturers and teachers. And then there will be a program coming for waiters, which is a skill-based one. I'll talk about that in the future. One-stop shop for the youth. That's what we're trying to create here, so that they can come in here and find all the rudimentaries that they need in order to make the better choices for tomorrow. And we are, as we say, trying to elevate the youth and draw you closer to you. That is it. Are there any questions? Let's see. So can I make a suggestion with the questions? We are 16 on the call. If you can just use the voice, just unmute yourself and ask the question. I think that'll be significantly easier rather than trying to read it in the chats. But I'll also be reading what's in the chats as well. Actually, maybe Claudia, are you able to help me read what's in the chats? Because my skills of reading and answering might be a bit limited.
Sure, there aren't any questions at this point. So
okay, cool.
Hi, sorry, Vakela, I have a question. This is Naledi.
Hi, Naledi.
How are you, Vakela?
Very well, thank you.
I want to find out, what's the age range of the youth the program's targeted at?
Well, we follow the, so I tend to go from grade 11 onwards. So we tend to follow that sort of typical youth of 18 to 35, 36. But it's not, I talk about the youth because it's directed at that, but it doesn't have to be limited to the youth at all.
No, that answers my question.
Were you thinking of younger or older?
I was thinking of actually that age in the sense of, I think for someone like my brother who's at 19, who's I think in the sense, yes.
Perfect.
So that's what, yes,
the earlier they start, the better.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense to everybody? Is everybody, is everybody comfortable with that? Is that really, has that helped? Any other questions? No, gee.
Everybody says it makes perfect sense. So that's good.
Okay, no, great. So from here, we encourage you to go into the website to please join. Our first session will be kicking off on the 2nd of July. We start with preparation. We really invite you to go in and join the process. It's a very basic EFT process that you will go through, so it's not too complicated. And yeah, looking forward to having as many of you. I know we've got some parents here, so and those parents, if they can encourage their youth to join, that would be fantastic. I do believe that it is a course that makes sense, and there have been some very good feedback from it as a result of helping people find their sense of self and to some level find their sense of direction. So that's over and out for me. Great. I've got one clap from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Vic.
I'm also still customizing myself to doing things via Zoom, because it's very different to live. You can
I actually have a question. I was raising my hand.
Oh, were you raising your hand? Okay, that was a clap. So I see there's a difference between a clap and raising your hand. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for the insights. It's not a question with regards to the program, but I'm just interested in how you can share some of your examples around planning and how planning didn't necessarily guarantee success. Because I don't know if I really believe that full planning does guarantee success. I don't know if you can share some insight on that.
Gee, Sarah, if I could give you answers about what guarantees something, then I wouldn't be sitting here. As they say, there are no guarantees in life. So the objective is not really to guarantee. The objective is to create yourself, put yourself on a path. I tend to use it very typically like if you were to decide that you were going to drive from here to Outer Mongolia, you wouldn't just get into your car and go, right? You would assure yourself that you've got the right amount of fuel that you require, that your car can actually, your car can actually take you there, make sure you've got the baggage that you require. Then you would understand how are you going to get there. You're going to follow the GPS. And if you're not like me, you don't just follow it randomly. Otherwise, you go in a different direction, but you map your way through and decide that this is the direction I'm going to take. If it was a journey that was significantly long, you couldn't do it in one day, you would then have to book yourself into a place to spend the night. You would then decide. That's the process of planning, right? You hope that nothing happens between here and there that derails you, i.e. you have the misfortune of being involved in a car accident, or you have you change your mind along the process to say, right, I'm not doing this, I'm going to do something completely else because they've just called me and said they're no longer going to be there and I've already driven 500 kilometers, etc., etc. The planning process is ensuring that the kind of key components of what you need to get you to the direction that you're going are there. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, that's got it. Makes sense.
Yeah. So that tends to be what tends to to be lacking. Now, generally, life has made technology very simple. So there are certain things that make things a lot easier for us. But if you go back to my time, it was a thing called a map. And if you did not know where you were going, you would have to chart your course very carefully and plan your route very carefully. So those are the kind of constructs that we talk about when we're referring to planning. Anything else? Great.
Oh, there aren't further questions now.
Sorry, I beg your pardon?
There aren't any other questions?
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining. I don't want you to spend your Friday evenings listening to me. I want you to go off and relax and enjoy your weekend. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to seeing a few of you on the 2nd of July. Until then, take care. Cheers, everybody.